I just want to, apologies, I just want to ask, maybe for someone that's watching and they want to practically know, within your voyage, you mentioned that we as colored people have been left behind. What does that practically look like?
It's very simple. If you can look at it from a Khoi San point of view, every BE deal that's done in this country does not include a Khoi San person. Zero Khoi San participation. There's no BE deal, even on land that belongs to us. We're talking about land that we have claims for, land in the Northern Cape, Western Cape. So we've been excluded from BE. Then we've been overlooked in terms of positions within government. File 13, that's where our CVs go. We've been overlooked for positions as politicians within political parties. We don't have prominent Khoi San and colored leaders that are taken in and given opportunities, whether it's in business, whether it's in government, or whether it's in international relations.
And is the door deliberately shut?
It's deliberately shut because understand when there's different people with different stakes, and you are the minority, you are going to be a price taker, not a price giver. In other words, it's basically you are going to be subject to them now saying, okay, this is our land, and we are in majority. The problem we have is we have one group that has the majority, which are African indigenous people, and it's not a bad thing. They are indigenous to Africa, but we are Aboriginal to Africa as Khoi San people. So as Aboriginal people, we should have Aboriginal rights, and our rights should be protected by government. But for 30 years, it's not been.
I just want to bring you in. Yes,
go for it.
You see, there's two dates that you've got to remember that I want to raise, and the one is 1904, and the one is 1950. In 1904, a census was done by the British, who were still in charge in 1904. That was before the formulation of the Republic of South Africa. And they did a census of who was in the Cape Colony back in the day. Cape Colony wasn't just the Western Cape, it was the Eastern Cape, Northern Cape, all the way through to Free State, right? And there they were very clear on who was there in terms of Aboriginal people. They had the Khoi and they had the San. Right? They had the Khoi, they had the Hill Damara, they had the Cape Malay, they had the Korana, the big Korana, the small Korana, the Griqua, they had the Nama. All our tribes were listed there, and there was over 500,000 people that were recorded back then. And since then, there's been no natural disasters. We've made lots of babies. So we've now, just by the natural progression, we should be close to 2.5, 3 million people, right? Since 1950, since 1904. 1950 came, the Apartheid government said, how are we going to stop these guys from claiming the land back? They then said, because remember, color didn't exist until 1950. They made the term up for everybody as a catch-all phrase so they can amalgamate the Aboriginal people with the slaves, the descendants of the slaves, to say, okay, now you're so mixed you don't exist anymore. That was the attempt of apartheid. So in 1950, up until that day, all of us were named under Aboriginal names. It then became illegal and we were then called colored people. So if we go further back and you see where our origins was, and you look at the real history of South Africa, not that's written in the history books, that's written in, that's now been presented to the TKLA Commission on Khoi San Matters. What's happening now is people are understanding that we are the oldest First Nation people in the world by DNA and history. And the Chinese came past here, and for 5,000 years, they traded with us as the Khoi San people, long before the Europeans came, which is only a few hundred years ago. And they said that we were military rulers, we had kings, we were trading in gold, in diamonds, in tusks, in animal furs, food, and water, and fruits and vegetables. We had farming, we had agriculture, we had a standing army, we had palaces made out of clay and bricks, and we had all of this infrastructure. And so it wasn't something that we were just bushmen that are just herders or just living off the land. We had a structured society, and when the Dutch came, they used smallpox as a biological weapon to kill our people, and that's where the destruction of our society began. And then there was the Vermin Act, which was passed by the British before this accepted by the Dutch. But ethnic cleansing is part of our history. And then in 1950, our further land got taken away under the Group Areas Act.
Apologies, where can we get all this information? There might be someone watching on the other end and basically asking the questions as well, because we weren't taught these things growing up. Did they deliberately keep this information away from us? Where are we able to get this information by means of of facts.
So that's the process that we're going through with the Commission on Khoi San matters now. So each of the royal houses, like Pofaders, for instance, I come from
And
the
on
Pofaders.
black and white, apologies.
On black,
Yeah,
and, black and white. It's on black and white. We all must submit the history of our people, the history of our lineages. For instance, in the Pofader lineage, from Klaas Pofader, that did Korana War 1, Korana War 2, was a Kam Kai Korana mix, right? And so they were San and Khoi as a people. But that's how it is with the ancient people. We are one people.
Do you agree? I'm discovering things, and I'm going to ask you questions on that.
Yeah.
Do you agree with in the existence of the Khoi San Commission that we need to apply to them for them in order to recognize as First Nation peoples?
I don't agree with the processes in the sense of how it's been done through the current legislation. That's why we have put in place a private members bill, because a private members bill on the adoption of the Khoi San as the original First Nation people, Aboriginal people of this country, that has now got into Parliament, because the Tikala Act doesn't say that we are the Aboriginal people. It says that we are one of the indigenous people, and we are subject to the other indigenous people that are in a majority. That is not true. We are the Aboriginal people. And so where we are with the Tikala Act, it doesn't acknowledge our kings. It doesn't acknowledge a lot of different things that other tribes have had for 30 years. Remember, we are only going through a recognition process now, but every other tribe, Zulu, Xhosa, Pedi, Tswana, they all gone through their recognition process 30 years ago. Their kings have been paid salaries, been given palaces, been given land, been given business deals, mine deals on that land for the last 30 years already. And our people haven't even been recognized once.
So what is Wesley Douglas doing in Parliament, as a member of Parliament, with regards to this issue about us being grouped together, the First Nation people, with other African tribes, and saying, listen guys, Africa is for Africa. You've heard that saying many times. And on that basis, we must all just share in the land equally in status in South Africa. So from a parliamentarian perspective, how are you engaging on that matter?
So it comes back to even our own political party in MK, for instance, because we've had to have an internal discussion about the Khoi San and Aboriginal people, and our president had to give us line of march and say, this is the position on the Khoi San. Yeah, President Zuma was very clear, and not just a long time ago, I'm talking about recently in all our meetings, he was very clear. The Khoi San are the Aboriginal First Nation people of this country, period. Doesn't matter what the people out there are saying, the narrative that is coming from the media, because they're owned by white monopoly capital, that we are extinct, etc. The reality is the Xhosa people, the Zulu people, they know they found us here, and they come from North Africa. But we're all Africans, right? The point is they are indigenous to Africa, but they are in the DNA makeup a much younger nations than we are. We are the oldest nations by DNA for Southern Africa and Africa. And we at the University of Uppsala, Stanford, and Harvard have done studies on our DNA and found us to be the oldest living race in the world and the cradle of humankind. So it's about, so where I'm at in Parliament, it's first we're having to go into my party and say, are we standing for the truth, or are we going to go and do the same thing that was done under the ANC for the last 30 years? And it was only President Zuma that said, no, I'm going to, what we did in the past is wrong. We are going to support the Khoi San people. We're going to support your recognition process, but also your land and your mineral rights.
I want to ask